The wind on Glacially 7 didn't howl, it screamed. Marcus Reed pressed his palm against the reinforced viewport of his habitat dome, watching the ice crystals spiral in violent torrents across the barren landscape. The storm had been raging for 3 days now, turning the already hostile moon into something that resembled the frozen hell of ancient mythology. Inside his modest shelter, the heating unit hummed its familiar mechanical lullaby, a sound that had become his only companion during the long, dark cycles that passed for days on this forgotten chunk of ice. The amber glow from the central heating core painted dancing shadows on the curved walls, creating an almost cozy atmosphere that belied the deadly cold just meters away. Marcus took a sip of his synthetic coffee and grimaced. Even after 2 years of solitude, he couldn't get used to the bitter aftertaste. But it was warm, and warmth was currency on Glacially 7. He'd come here after the mining surveys ended, when the corporate overlords decided this particular frozen wasteland held no profitable secrets. While others fled to more hospitable worlds, Marcus had stayed. The silence suited him. After losing his wife and daughter in the colony transport accident on Kepler 442b, noise had become unbearable. Every laugh reminded him of little Emma's giggles. Every conversation echoed with memories of Anna's voice. Here there was only the wind and his own thoughts, and most days that was enough. The knock came so suddenly that Marcus nearly dropped his mug. 3 sharp raps against the outer airlock door, barely audible above the storm's fury. He froze, certain he'd imagined it. No one could survive outside in this weather. The temperature sensors read minus 47 degrees Celsius, and that was before factoring in the wind chill. Another knock, more desperate this time. Marcus grabbed his thermal scanner from the equipment wall and aimed it toward the entrance. 3 heat signatures huddled against his door, 1 large, 2 small, all rapidly cooling toward dangerous levels. His heart hammered as he rushed to the airlock controls. The safety protocols demanded he verify identity first, run contamination scans, check for weapons. But the smaller signatures were fading fast, and something primal in his chest overrode procedure. The outer door hissed open, and the storm's voice exploded into his sanctuary. Through the swirling snow, he saw them, a woman and 2 children, their alien features unmistakable, even through the frost coating their blue-tinged skin. The woman was tall and elegant, despite her obvious exhaustion, with the distinctive elongated limbs and silver-white hair of the Thylorian species. Her golden eyes met his through the storm, wide with desperation and something else, a resigned sadness that cut through him like a blade. Clinging to her legs were 2 small forms, a boy and a girl, their tiny hands purple with cold. The boy, perhaps 8 years old, tried to shield his younger sister with his own body, though he was clearly freezing himself. The girl couldn't have been more than 5, her face buried against her mother's tattered cloak. "Please," the woman said in accented standard, her voice barely carrying over the wind. "We need shelter." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Get inside, now." As they stumbled through the airlock, he caught the woman's distinctive scent, something like winter roses and ozone. But beneath it was the smell of fear, desperation, and something else that made his stomach clench, the metallic tang of recent violence. The inner door sealed, cutting off the storm's roar. In the sudden silence, their labored breathing seemed impossibly loud. The children collapsed immediately onto the heated floor, their small bodies shaking uncontrollably. The woman remained standing, swaying slightly, her golden eyes taking in every detail of his home, with the wariness of someone who'd learned that safety was always temporary. "My name is Nessa," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "These are my children Kip and Luna." Marcus knelt beside the boy, noting the blue tinge around his lips, the way his fingers wouldn't uncurl from fists. "They need warmth, immediately." He moved efficiently, gathering thermal blankets from his emergency supplies. activating secondary heating elements around the room. As he worked, he felt Nessa watching his every move, ready to grab her children and run at the first sign of threat. "You're Thylorian," he said, not asking. "Yes." Her voice carried a note of defensiveness. "Does that matter to you?" Marcus looked up from adjusting Luna's blanket, meeting those striking golden eyes. "Only in terms of medical care. Your species runs colder than humans. I need to know how to help." Something in her posture relaxed fractionally. "Thank you." As warmth slowly returned to the children's faces, color replacing the frightening blue pallor, Marcus prepared hot nutrient broth. He'd seen hypothermia before during his surveying days. These three had been minutes from dying. "How did you get here?" he asked, handing Nessa a steaming mug. "There are no settlements for hundreds of kilometers." Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the warmth. "We've been walking for days. Our transport crashed in the lower valley." It was a lie. Marcus had been monitoring all traffic in the system for months. No ships had gone down. But the fear in her eyes was real, and the children's condition spoke of genuine desperation. Luna stirred at her blankets, her large silver eyes focusing on Marcus with curious innocence. "Are you going to hurt us?" she whispered. The question hit him like a physical blow. What kind of life had taught a child that age to expect harm from strangers? "No, little one," he said gently, crouching to her level. "You're safe here." Kip, the older boy, struggled to sit up straighter. "We don't have anything to pay you with," he said with heartbreaking dignity. "But Mama says she can work." Nessa's face flushed deeper blue embarrassment, Marcus realized. "Or shame. We don't need to discuss payment," Marcus said firmly. "You're guests here until the storm passes." But Nessa stepped forward, her chin raised with desperate pride. "I know what human males desire," she said quietly, her voice breaking slightly. "I will share your bed, provide you warmth and comfort. In return, please don't turn us back into the cold." The words hung in the air like ice crystals, beautiful and sharp enough to cut. Marcus stared at her, seeing not seduction, but sacrifice. A mother willing to trade her body for her children's lives. "That's not necessary," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "It's what I have to offer," she replied simply. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the dome, something had shifted. Three strangers had crashed into Marcus's carefully constructed solitude, bringing with them mysteries, danger, and the first stirrings of something he'd thought died with his family. As he watched Nessa tend to her children with fierce, protective love, Marcus realized his quiet exile was over. The question was, what would take its place? The morning on Glacial 7 brought no sunrise, only a gradual shift from black to deep gray as the storm continued its relentless assault on the dome. Nessa Vorthix sat perfectly still beside the heating unit, her back straight, hands folded in her lap, a posture of resigned waiting that spoke of years of uncertainty. She hadn't slept. How could she? Every moment of rest was a moment she couldn't protect her children, couldn't watch for signs that their temporary sanctuary might become another trap. The human Marcus had given them his bed while he dozed fitfully in the chair, but comfort felt dangerous. Comfort made you soft, made you forget its safety was always an illusion. Beside her, Luna and Kip slept deeply for the first time in weeks, their small bodies finally warm enough to truly rest. Luna's silver hair fanned across the pillow like spun starlight, her breathing soft and even. Kip maintained his protective posture even in sleep, one arm stretched toward his sister, ready to shield her from whatever threat might come. Watching them, Nessa felt the familiar ache in her chest love, so fierce it bordered on physical pain. They were all she had left of her old life, her bonded life before everything shattered. "You should eat something." Marcus's quiet voice made her tense, though he'd moved carefully to avoid startling her. He stood several feet away, holding a steaming bowl, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. In the soft light of the heating core, she could see him more clearly than she had the night before. He was perhaps 40 standard years, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent time in harsh environments. Dark hair, graying at the temples, and eyes the color of storm clouds' kind eyes, but haunted. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw told a story of violence survived, much like the faded marks on her own wrists that she kept hidden beneath her sleeves. "Thank you," she said softly, accepting the bowl. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and she was surprised by the gentleness of his touch. In her experience, human males were either brutal or transactional. This one seemed different. "What's your real story, Nessa?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from her. Not demanding, just curious. "You didn't crash here." She stiffened, but his tone held no accusation. "Why do you think that?" "I monitor all system traffic. No ships have gone down in months. And your children's condition? They've been undernourished for weeks, not days." Nessa stared into her bowl, watching the steam rise like tiny ghosts. The truth was dangerous, but lies were becoming harder to maintain. "We escaped," she said finally. "From Thylaris Prime." Marcus waited, not pushing, and something about his patience loosened the knot in her chest. "My bondmate died in the border conflicts 2 years ago," she continued. "Jarek was a stellar cartographer, not a soldier, but the conscription laws didn't care. He was bonded to me, which means—" She paused, searching for words that would make sense to a human. "When Thylorians bond, it's not just marriage. It's a psychic connection, a sharing of life force. When he died, part of me went with him." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and the simple words carried genuine understanding. "I lost my wife and daughter, too. Transport accident." Their eyes met across the small space, and Nessa saw her own grief reflected there. It was strange, this moment of recognition between two broken people from different worlds. "After Jarek's death, I was considered incomplete," she continued. "Unbonded females with offspring are seen as available. The local magistrate, Zorvan Kauth, decided my children needed a proper father." "Meaning him." Marcus's jaw tightened. "And you refused." "I tried to work within the system. I had training as a xenobotanist. I could support us. But Kauth made it impossible. He blocked my work permits, had us evicted from our dwelling. He said I was being stubborn, that I should be grateful for his interest." "Bastard," Marcus muttered. "When he sent his enforcers to collect us for a formal bonding ceremony, we ran. I stole a maintenance shuttle and got us as far as I could before the fuel cells died. We've been walking ever since." The weight of those words settled between them. Weeks of running, of keeping 2 small children alive in hostile environments, of facing the constant threat of recapture. "He'll come after you," Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "Perhaps, if he thinks we're worth the effort." Nessa's voice carried a lifetime of making herself smaller, less noticeable, hoping to be forgotten. A small sound from the bed made them both turn. Luna was sitting up, rubbing her silver eyes with tiny fists. "Mama, is it safe time?" Safe time. The phrase broke Marcus's heart. What kind of childhood required such careful categorization of moments? "Yes, little star," Nessa said, her voice immediately gentler. "It's safe time." Luna climbed down from the bed, her bare feet silent on the warm floor. She approached Marcus with the fearless curiosity that only very young children possessed, studying his face with those large, luminous eyes. "You have sad marks, too," she observed solemnly. "Sad marks?" Marcus asked. "Lines around your eyes. Mama gets them when she thinks about Papa, but yours are different. Older. From the mouth of a child, such devastating insight." Marcus found himself smiling despite the ache in his chest. "You're very observant, Luna." "Kip says I see too much," she replied matter-of-factly. "But Mama says seeing is important. It helps you know who's safe." "And am I safe?" Marcus asked gently. Luna tilted her head, considering seriously. Then she nodded. "You smell like lonely, not angry. Angry people hurt. Lonely people usually just want to help." Nessa's breath caught. Her daughter's intuitive understanding of emotional states was both a gift and a burden. It had kept them alive on the run, but it meant Luna had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness. Kip stirred then, instantly alert as he always was upon waking. His eyes found his mother first, then his sister, cataloging their safety before acknowledging Marcus. "Good morning," Marcus said. Kip nodded formally. "Thank you for letting us stay. The storm sounds—" He paused, listening to the howling wind outside. "Angry. It'll pass," Marcus assured him. "They always do eventually." As if summoned by their conversation, the storm's voice rose to a shriek, rattling the dome's reinforced structure. Luna instinctively moved closer to her mother, while Kip straightened his small shoulders. "Are you scared?" Marcus asked Kip gently. The boy's chin lifted with fierce pride. "I don't get scared. I protect. That's a heavy burden for someone your age." "Someone has to," Kip replied simply. "Mama protects us from the bad people. I protect us from everything else." The matter-of-fact way he said it revealed more about their journey than any detailed account could have. This child had been forced to grow up too fast, to shoulder responsibilities that should have belonged to adults. "Well, while you're here, maybe I can help with some of that protecting," Marcus offered. Kip studied him with eyes far too old for his young face. "Why would you do that? We're not your family." The question hung in the air, loaded with the weight of a child's pragmatic understanding of the universe. People helped their own, protected their own. Strangers were either threats or opportunities, rarely sources of genuine aid. Marcus found himself looking at Nessa, seeing the careful hope she tried to hide in her golden eyes. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "family isn't about blood or bonds. Sometimes it's about choosing to care." Luna clapped her hands softly. "Like choosing to open your door when someone knocks?" "Exactly like that." The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the dome, something warmer than the heating unit began to grow. 4 people, all carrying wounds from their pasts, began the tentative process of discovering they might not have to face their futures alone. As Nessa watched Marcus patiently answer Luna's endless questions while showing Kip how to monitor the dome's environmental systems, she felt something she'd thought died with Jarek stirring back to life. Not the psychic bond of her people that could never be replaced, but something purely her own, a recognition of kindness that asked for nothing in return. For the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to wonder what it might be like to stop running, to build something new instead of simply surviving what remained of the old. Outside, the storm screamed its fury against the dome's walls. But inside, 4 hearts began the slow, careful process of learning to trust again. Kip Vorthik had learned to read danger in the smallest details, the way a person's shoulders tensed before they struck, the particular silence that meant someone was deciding whether you were worth the trouble, the difference between a genuine smile and one that promised pain. At 8 years old, he'd become an expert in survival, but Marcus Reed confused him. The human had been teaching him about the dome systems for the past 2 days, patient and thorough in his explanations. He showed Kip how to read the environmental displays, how to adjust heating sectors, how to monitor the power cells that kept them alive in this frozen wasteland. But more puzzling than the lessons was Marcus's motivation. "Why are you showing me this?" Kip asked, his small fingers tracing the control panel diagrams Marcus had sketched on a piece of recycled hull plating. Marcus looked up from calibrating a secondary heating unit. Because it's useful knowledge. Understanding your environment gives you control over it. But we're leaving when the storm ends, Kip said matter-of-factly. We always leave. The human paused in his work. Do you want to leave? The question caught Kip off guard. Want had been a luxury they couldn't afford for so long that he'd almost forgotten it existed. It doesn't matter what I want, he replied, falling back on the safety of pragmatism. Mama decides what's safe. But if it did matter, Marcus pressed gently. If you could choose? Kip glanced across the dome to where his mother and Luna were working together to repair their damaged clothes. Nessa's patient hands guiding Luna's smaller ones as they stitched torn fabric. In the warm light of the heating core, his mother looked younger somehow. The constant tension in her shoulders eased for the first time in months. I like it here, he admitted quietly. Luna laughs here. Real laughs, not the quiet ones she has to do when we're hiding. As if summoned by his words, Luna's delighted giggle echoed across the dome. She'd discovered Marcus's collection of geological samples and was arranging the crystalline formations into elaborate patterns, narrating an intricate story about crystal kingdoms and ice princesses to anyone who would listen. The blue ones are the royal family, she explained seriously to Marcus, who had abandoned his repair work to sit cross-legged on the floor beside her. They're sad because their kingdom is too cold, but they don't know how to make warmth without melting. That's a difficult problem, Marcus agreed solemnly. What do you think they should do? Luna considered this with the gravity of a seasoned diplomat. Maybe they need to find someone who knows about warm things. Someone who can teach them how to be warm without disappearing. The innocent wisdom in her words made Nessa's breath catch. Her daughter had always possessed an intuitive understanding of metaphor that sometimes frightened her with its accuracy. That's very wise. Little star, she said softly. Luna beamed, then returned to her crystal kingdom. But Kip noticed how Marcus's eyes lingered on his mother's face, and how she looked away with a flush of deeper blue across her silver skin. The adults were dancing around, something Kip had seen it before. The careful way they moved around each other, the meaningful silences, the quick glances when they thought no one was watching. But this felt different from the predatory interest they'd fled from. This felt ... careful, respectful. Marcus, Kip said suddenly, are you lonely? The question was so direct that both adults stopped what they were doing. Marcus met the boy's serious gaze with equal gravity. Yes, he said simply. I have been for a long time. Do you think lonely people should stay lonely? Marcus glanced at Nessa, who was watching the exchange with something like wonder in her golden eyes. No, he said finally. I don't think anyone should have to stay lonely forever. Good, Kip nodded with satisfaction. Because Mama's lonely too, even though she pretends she's not. And Luna needs more people to tell her stories to. I can only listen to the Crystal Kingdom saga so many times. Hey, Luna protested, but she was grinning. That evening, as the storm continued its relentless assault outside, they fell into an easy domestic rhythm. Marcus prepared a meal from his carefully rationed supplies, stretching the portions to feed 4 instead of 1. Nessa helped, their movements around the small cooking area naturally synchronized, her alien grace complementing his practical efficiency. Tell me about Thylarus Prime, Marcus said as they worked. What was it like before the conflicts? Nessa's hands stilled for a moment, then resumed chopping the reconstituted vegetables. Beautiful, she said softly. The capital was built into the crystal caves beneath the polar ice. The walls would catch and reflect the auroral lights, turning everything into rainbows. Jarek used to say it was like living inside a prism. Her voice carried love and loss in equal measure. But for the first time, the love was stronger. He was mapping the outer rim sectors when he died, she continued, looking for new worlds where our people could expand peacefully. He believed there was room enough in the galaxy for everyone. "He sounds like a good man," Marcus said. He was. Nessa met his eyes. "But he's gone. And I'm still here." The weight of that statement, the choice implicit in it, the acknowledgement that survival could become living, again settled between them like a bridge being built one careful word at a time. Later, as the children slept, Nessa and Marcus found themselves sitting close together near the viewport, watching the storm paint abstract patterns in the snow. The dome felt smaller in the darkness, more intimate. What were their names? Nessa asked it quietly. "Your wife and daughter." "Anna and Emma," Marcus replied, his voice steady but soft. "Anna was a botanist, like you. She could make anything grow, even in the harshest environments. Emma was 6, and she asked approximately 10,000 questions per day. Like Luna," Nessa observed with a small smile. "Very much like Luna. She would have loved your Crystal Kingdom stories." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sharing their grief without judgment or expectation. "I loved Jarek completely," Nessa said suddenly. "The bond between us was absolute. But it's gone now, and I can't bring it back." "I'm not asking you to," Marcus replied. "I'm not asking you to forget him or replace what you had. I just—" He paused, searching for words. "I like having you here. All of you. This place has been a tomb for 2 years, and you've brought it back to life." Nessa turned to face him fully, her golden eyes searching his face in the dim light. "What are you saying, Marcus?" "I'm saying stay. Not because you have to, not because you owe me anything, but because maybe we all deserve a chance to build something new." Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the dome. Both adults were on their feet instantly, Marcus grabbing a thermal scanner, while Nessa moved protectively toward the children. "Structural breach in the outer wall," Marcus said, reading the display. "Secondary seal is holding, but if the storm gets worse, ... Another crack, louder this time. Luna woke with a frightened cry, immediately reaching for her mother. Kip sat up, alert and ready. "What's happening?" he asked. "Nothing we can't handle," Marcus assured him, though his expression was grim. "I need to reinforce the outer seal." "Nessa, can you monitor the environmental readings?" She nodded, taking the scanner. "What do you need me to look for?" "Pressure drops, temperature fluctuations. If the seal fails completely, we'll have minutes before the cold gets through the inner wall." Marcus pulled on his heaviest thermal gear and moved toward the maintenance access. The outer seal could be reached from inside the dome, but it meant working in a space that was barely insulated from the killing cold outside. "I'm coming with you," Kip announced, jumping down from the bed. "Absolutely not," both adults said simultaneously. "I know the systems now," Kip insisted. "You'll need someone to watch the readings while you work." "I can do that from here," Nessa said. "Not if you're watching Luna, too." "And she's scared." It was true. Luna had wrapped herself around her mother's legs, trembling with more than cold. Marcus looked between the determined boy and the frightened little girl, then at Nessa's torn expression. "He's right," he said finally. "Kip, you stay at the access point. Monitor the internal temperature. If it drops below freezing, you call out immediately." "Understood?" Kip nodded solemnly, pulling on one of Marcus's thermal jackets that hung to his ankles. The maintenance crawlway was barely large enough for Marcus's shoulders, and the cold pressed against the thin insulation like a living thing. His breath came out in white puffs as he worked to seal the crack in the outer wall, applying emergency polymer patches while Kip called out temperature readings. "Still holding at 12 degrees, Kip reported. "Pressure's steady." Another crack appeared as Marcus worked, this one longer. The storm was testing every weakness in their shelter, and the dome was losing. Marcus. Kip's voice carried a note of alarm. Temperatures dropping, fast. The seal was failing faster than he could repair it. In minutes, the cold would breach their last defense. "Get back to your mother," Marcus ordered. "Now, not without you," Kip replied stubbornly. This isn't a debate. But as Marcus turned to argue, his foot slipped on the frost-slick surface. He fell hard against the access wall, and somewhere in the impact, another section of the outer seal gave way. Arctic air rushed in like a killing wind got suddenly. Small hands were grabbing his shoulders, pulling with surprising strength. Kip had crawled into the access space, his face blue with cold, but his expression determined. "Come on," the boy shouted over the roaring wind. "We go together." Together, they scrambled back toward the main dome, the temperature plummeting behind them. Marcus slammed the access hatch just as the outer seal failed completely, sealing them inside with their rapidly diminishing heat dot in the main dome. Nessa had activated every backup heating unit, turning their shelter into a cocoon of warmth. Luna was wrapped in blankets near the central core, her silver eyes wide but no longer afraid. "Will it hold?" Nessa asked as Marcus and Kip emerged from the accessway, both shivering violently. Marcus checked his readings. "The inner wall is solid. We'll be fine until the storm passes." But they all knew how close it had been. Without Kip's help, without his stubborn refusal to leave, Marcus might not have made it back dot as they huddled together around the heating core. Sharing warmth and the relief of survival, something fundamental shifted. They were no longer strangers sharing shelter. They were a family who had saved each other. When Kip finally fell asleep between Marcus and Nessa, his small hand clasped in the human's larger one, his protective instincts finally at rest, Nessa whispered. "He's never trusted anyone like that before. Not since his father died." "He's a remarkable boy," Marcus replied softly. "They both are. They need stability. A home. Someone who won't leave them. They have you." "I can keep them alive," Nessa said, her voice heavy with the weight of their journey. "But I can't give them everything they need." Tonight, watching Kip choose to help instead of simply protect, that was growth. Hope. "You gave him that?" Marcus looked down at the sleeping children, then at the woman beside him, whose strength had carried them through impossible hardships. "Maybe," he said quietly. "We can give each other what we need." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside their small sanctuary, 4 hearts beat in rhythm with something that felt remarkably like home.